False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm John Buhler, staff writer, fansided.com. I'm joined today by a man who didn't have a 1-year-old's birthday party at a brewery, who I don't think has ever been to Morocco before, but has been doing this podcast with me for precisely 1 year. Cody Williams, content director. Hey, look, Ma, we made it. Fansided.com. How the hell are you?
It's been 1 year since you looked at me, looked at the sun, and said I'm angry. No, dude, doing good, man. It's been a long week, but I think college football is both like gonna get us both through it. Like we got a full slate tonight on Thursday night, even fuller slate on Saturday, a little appetizer on Friday and Monday and Sunday. So, it's a good week, man. A lot of good things happening.
Your boys play tonight. We've also got Mizzou, Utah, Kansas, and NC State. So 4 ranked teams in your team. But so it's going to be cool. I'll be watching this and the Braves play the Phillies, but that may go bad. So I may just watch college football.
I mean, let's be clear. My team playing tonight is not one of the things I'm excited about. That's not getting me through at all. I'm absolutely terrified for what this is going to look like.
I mean, PJ Fleck's sweater vest will be on point. I don't know if his team will be, but he'll be groomed to the T.
It'll be sweater vest versus Old Man Jordans, and it's going to be electric.
Like Zoolander, it's mostly about fashion.
That's right.
Obviously, we've false started here a little bit. We're kind of going to put a bow on the preview here. We're going to do a little bit of, 3 things that kind of tie a bow on our preview to this point, preview the weekend, and talk about the offseason. So, first and 15, playoffs. You kidding me? Cody and I have done the math so you don't have to. We have put together our 12-team playoff brackets. Plus, our hardest decisions and some of the biggest foreseen controversies. So, over the course of the previous 5 episodes, we've listed, the winner of the group of 5 and the winner of, ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big 10. So, we're going to go 1 through 4 and then 12 and then break down each other matchup. And then we'll eventually pick a champion. And you can hold us to this. It's going to be great. It's going to be false start.
It's going to be false start, brother. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, more ready for this than our fantasy draft. My goodness gracious, this thing is taking forever.
On one hand, untimed picks seemed like a really good idea considering we're all working, we all have different schedules. On the other hand, untimed also means it could take an eternity.
I'm not going to put anyone on blast, but I've been on deck for 12 hours and Cody's been in the hole for the same amount of time. So there's a good chance we're going to be picking on this draft, and we will talk about our teams as it happens. Buhler
Absolutely.
118, Buhler 118 and the Sizzle 20 are going to be great teams once they're formed in week 7.
Yeah, I can't wait to form it right before the trade deadline.
I know, and I can't wait for half these teams in our 12-team brackets to already be eliminated from playoff contention by that point. So you start. You go your top 4 and then your 12. Like, these are teams you've already said just do seeding. Who do you have for these 5 teams?
Yeah, so seeding, I've got Georgia at 1, I've got Oregon at 2, I've got Kansas State at 3, and I've got NC State at 4. My group of 5 champion, as mentioned earlier this week, Boise State. I have them as a 12 seed.
That's pretty straightforward. I feel the really only thing you'd have to debate in your mind is who's 1 and 2, and then who's 3 and 4.
Yeah, exactly. It's the top 2 are not questionable. The 3 and 4 are, in my mind, like, it's whoever you want out of the Big 12 and the ACC, and you can put them in any order, if we're being honest.
Just take me through your methodology of how you picked Georgia over Oregon, and then how you picked Kansas State over NC State in your methodology.
Yeah, so Georgia over Oregon, I do think that Oregon is going to slip up. I don't see them going into this 12-0. The more I've considered it, the more it's hard for me to see. Like, I see fewer outcomes for the season for Georgia where they're not 12-0. I understand it's a hard schedule, but the more I look at this team, the more I think it is what we expect Georgia to be. It is the cream of the crop. It is the best in the country. So, like, when I'm stacking that up against what I think is going to be a 1-loss team who gets the best of Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, I just think you give Georgia the edge there, and that's not really like a hard thing. Kansas State and NC State, this really came down to strength of conference for me. I think that Kansas State and the Big 12 are a little bit stronger, particularly at the top, especially after what we saw from Florida State this past in week 0. I think Kansas State and the Big 12 are a little bit stronger at the top, which I think is going to just minorly give them the edge. 3 or 4 was a lot harder for me to decide than 1 or 2. Like I could see it both ways, but I do think that the other thing that I'm looking at is NC State has a non-conference game against Tennessee. Kansas State doesn't necessarily have that flavor of matchup, but I project NC State losing that game. And so without when you lose that signature win, that's another loss on the ledger, excuse me, Jesus. It's early. I mean, my English is not working, but
It's cool,
if
man.
they another loss on the ledger, like I think that's going to knock them down to the 4 seed.
That's perfect. And then you had Boise getting the Group of Five champion, who was like the next Group of Five up. We'll probably talk about that here in a minute, but you just see Boise is clearly the best team over. I think we were consistent. It was like Liberty or Memphis. Was there one that you would feel was like could have gotten that if it wasn't Boise?
Yeah, I have Liberty as my second team, and the reason it's Boise over Liberty is the strength of the conference. That's literally what it comes down to. Like the Mountain West is just a top to bottom better league than CUSA, and I think Liberty, honestly, like I think we're looking at a world where Boise State could still be the Group of Five bid AQ as a one-loss team, even if Liberty's undefeated, just because the CUSA is so weak. So like I think that Boise State has a lot of leeway to get in over a Liberty. I think Memphis does too, but I'm a little less confident in Memphis running the table in the same way that I think Boise State could.
I think that's fair. And maybe I for one, like I haven't done my top 25. You've probably gone further down, but I would venture to guess at regular seasons and those three teams are all probably going to be ranked.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Okay. Are you ready for what's to come? Are you ready?
Are
Hey.
you ready?
Okay. So my number one seed is Georgia, 13-0 as your SEC champion. Ohio State's 2, 13-0 Big Ten champion. Utah Utes 3, 13-0 Big 12 champion. 4, Miami Hurricanes, 12-1 ACC champion. And I've got the Liberty Flames going 12-0, winning Conference USA, getting the group of five. I for the pretty much the same sort of methodology you had between 1 and 2. Obviously, my 2 is different than yours. It's the same sort of thing. I feel Georgia is more likely to run the table and go undefeated more than Ohio State. As for 3 and 4, right there with you, I think even though Utah is 1 win better than Miami in my projections, I think that the top quarter, probably top half of the Big 12 is better than what the
Mhm.
ACC is, or we have a stronger feeling of who's going to be good. So I think that
Yeah.
plays into the narrative as well. And then obviously, I think I've got Liberty going as the 12 seed because, like, I think they're going to go undefeated. Boise may slip up a little bit. That may hurt them in the eyes of the committee. But again, I think Boise, Liberty, and Memphis are all going to finish the year ranked.
No, I think that's a really good call. I think that it was weird to see the preseason AP top 25 without a G5 team in it. That's something we actually didn't really talk about when we unpacked the
No,
AP top 25, but like there's no G5 in the top 25, which is I have a hard time seeing the season end that way. But I do think it also when we were talking about the group of five, I do think is also indicative of there's a lot of good teams and we're kind of waiting on a great team to separate themselves from the group of five level.
precisely. So we've those are all of our AQ spots. Who's hosting Liberty? Who do you got as the 5 seed?
Shocking no one. It's Ohio State. Like it's Ohio State. Like I think that Oregon, the way I'm projecting the Big Ten, Ohio State clips Oregon in Eugene during the regular season for that matchup. So that gives you an 11-1 Oregon and a 12-0 Michigan or a 12-1 or 12-0 Ohio State playing in the Big Ten championship game. Oregon gets its revenge on the neutral site, which is going to propel them into playoff because timing matters with this stuff. We know that we've seen it 100 times. Timing
Right.
absolutely matters. So like I think that we're going to just be looking at two 12-1 teams and like obviously Oregon's going to win the conference, so they're going to get the AQ spot, but like Ohio State would be a top 4 team in any other ranking that we were doing, but we just have the AQ spots.
I think that's fair. My 5 is Notre Dame because I've got Notre Dame going undefeated. So
Okay.
in like that'd be cool. Like Notre Dame versus Liberty versus Notre Dame in South Bend. Who's calling that game? Jeff Francoeur.
Jeff Francoeur, maybe Jeff Samardzija. Maybe he comes out and calls it with Frenchie.
And Jeff Schwartz on the sideline, just three Jeffs.
Our name's Jeff.
My name's Jeff, Jeff, and Nick,
Nick.
Nick. Okay, this is where it's going to start getting really fun. I don't know if this is the best. Okay, let's do it. You want to do a 6-11 now, right?
Yeah, 6-11.
So who do you have 6-11?
So six seed, I have Texas. Again, not that shocking. Like we think Oregon and Texas and Ohio State and Georgia are like the top four teams in the country. So having them at 5 and 6 because they didn't get the automatic qualifier spots. But then 11, probably my first surprise. I'm hitching my wagon to it. The USC Trojans. I have the USC Trojans
Wow.
as the number 11 seed.
This comes as quite a shock, and that game is gonna what Texas versus USC. Um,
Vibes are going to be
Joel
immaculate.
Joel Klatt is just gonna be losing his mind, and David Buster's that he can't call this game.
That's right.
Gus Johnson's like Dicker, the kicker. I'm like, he plays for the Chargers now, man. Oh shoot.
Oh, my bad.
I only work from Labor Day until the Holiday Bowl, and that's it. I don't do anything else. Maybe some shitty hoops, but I'm not ready yet.
That's right. Yeah, he needs a little break before he gets into the shooty hoops.
Okay. Are you ready for my 6-11?
Let's do it.
This is going to be coursing some Big Ten energy through your veins. I've got the Oregon Ducks hosting the Penn State Nittany Lions.
Oh,
I've got
baby.
I've got Oregon losing to Ohio State both in Eugene and in Indianapolis. I feel just a new environment there could prove problematic. And then Penn State, they're the drivers. They're going 10-2. And if you go 10-2 in the Big Ten for the most part, and you're a top 3 or 4 team, you're probably getting in. So that's how I see that happening.
I dig it, man. I think that makes a lot of sense. I
All
I
right.
have I have both of those teams in my playoffs, so that's good.
You know what? Me too, because I just said that. So let's do the Arthur Smith 7-10 split here. Who do you have playing in that first round game?
So this is where I have Notre Dame. I actually have Notre Dame losing this week. I have Notre Dame losing to Texas A&M. I think that Texas A&M is a uniquely bad matchup for Notre Dame because of replacing Charles Dragusa. And we look at Nick Scorton coming over from Purdue to Texas A&M. You look at Shamar Stewart on the other edge. Like they're going to give this Notre Dame freshman tackle, a 3-star recruit who's making his first start. He's going to have a bad time. Riley Leonard might have a bad time. So I have Notre Dame slipping up there, but I think they can run the table thereafter. Like their schedule is completely manageable. So I have Notre Dame as a 7 seed, and then I have the 10 seed LSU. So I think that LSU is my last SEC team getting in, like in terms of like the at-large berth. So I think LSU is the one who kind of takes that mantle from, I'm sure, a team that you're probably about to say at number 10.
Oh my goodness. The Brian Kelly Bowl. Let's go, dude.
That's right. Hey, look, it wasn't even intentional, but I made some juicy matchups. Like we got the Natty matchup rematch with Texas and USC. We got Notre Dame LSU, and then 8-9 is going to be just a hoot and a half.
Oh, I'm sure. So I kind of feel that though. So my 7-10 gonna be incredibly SEC. I've got Texas hosting LSU.
Okay. Oh, I like it. You got LSU at the 10. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Again, Texas is kind of the same sort of boat that, like, with Oregon, where like they lose to Georgia twice. And
Mm-hmm.
but again, like no one's gonna like harpoon them over that. You're losing to like one of
No.
the presumptive favorite to win the national championship. No one's gonna have a problem with that. And then LSU, I got them 10-2. I think the big key there is they got the Magnolia Bowl win right now. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
we're going to talk about that here a little bit more as I kind of unpack that a little bit. But obviously, it's the Brian Kelly pop here. We're big fans of Garrett Nussmeier. He's got this year and next. I think he could possibly next.
Next. He's got the next year.
I think he's going to be a first round pick in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be a dude, man. So, all right, the last two teams in. Who's your 8-9, brother?
So I've got Ole Miss at the 8 and Penn State at the 9, and we're getting the Lane Kiffin James Franklin matchup that we want, know, and love. Because I can't think of two different coaches if we're being real honest. Like Lane is a ball of fire, James Franklin is a ball of ash, I guess. Like he's just not excitement at all. But hey, man, I think that Ole Miss, I can't get past the schedule. That's kind of when I look at the talent that they brought in relation to their schedule. I'm like the schedule's not like easy. It's not a cakewalk. It's an SEC schedule, but like I just think like I look at their schedule and they're better than most of the teams on their schedule outside of maybe Georgia. And like I say maybe outside of Georgia. Let me be clear about that. But I see Ole Miss being favored in most of these games. I think that I have a lot of trust in Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin does make the leap. It's something we've talked about all offseason. I think he does. And then Penn State, like you said, they're going 10 and 2. And I think that the way things shake out, like that's going to be an impressive 10 and 2. So, and there's a chance they go 11 and 1. If they go 11 and 1, maybe they're higher than the 9 seed, but I do like them like pretty comfortably in this playoff.
Peach Bowl rematch happened in 4 miles from my apartment, which I'm not at right now, or maybe I am. You guys have no idea. My 8-9 is probably going to shock you a little bit. I've got Tennessee hosting Kansas State.
Okay. Oh, two Big 12 teams. Okay, 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 okay.
Tennessee, yeah, two Big 12 teams in the tournament. As I was doing the schedule thing, Tennessee ended up. I initially had them going 10 and 2, and I'm like, wait, I messed that up. They beat out Alabama, so their only loss is to Georgia in this
Hmm.
format. Kansas State, I believe, is 11 and 2. Their only two losses I have are, I think, at West Virginia, which I don't think anybody in the Big 12 wants to go play at Milan
No.
Puskar Stadium, if that's even how you say it. I read that word and I don't know how to say it.
It's
Mountaineer
it's
Field.
Morgantown, dude. You'll learn something about me if I don't know like if I can't say the name of a stadium, I'm gonna just say the town that it's in, and it's pro tip there. I was actually writing about West Virginia yesterday, and off the top of my head, like I just blanked on what it was, and I was like, as Penn State goes to Morgantown.
The Washingtons go to Birmingham and this is false start.
That's right.
Yeah, I've got K-State, like, losing to undefeated Utah in the Big 12 championship. I think that they're going to be really good. I think that they're my pick right now for definitely maybe in terms of being what Mizzou was last year. And Tennessee is going to have I think Tennessee has the potential to have a really great year. If Nico is as good as advertised, that would be wonderful. If he's closer to Hendon Hooker than Joe Milton III, then that's going to be absolutely tremendous for them. But then that leaves us with teams that didn't quite make it. So we'll probably say
Mhm.
our first four out, then we'll kind of go through and say how our playoff goes through. The toughest exclusion for me was the Ole Miss Rebels. I had them going 10 and 2, but their two losses are to Georgia and LSU. I don't see the
Mhm.
quality win there. Really talented team. It just breaks poorly for them. I feel really bad.
No, and I think that's fair. And I to be clear, I don't think it's crazy that you have Tennessee in the playoff because they're my first team out. Tennessee was my first team out. I think it's a really good season brewing. I think you could honestly interchange them with LSU. Like I think depending on how things break, depending on what the like one of the things I always try to at least like leave a little bit of grace for is if some of like the teams that we think are going to be good aren't. And so like that's no longer as quality of a win, looking at it that way. Or maybe teams are better than we expected and that's more of a quality win. So you got to leave a little bit of grace period there. But I do think Tennessee, like I do worry. I think Tennessee is going to be very good. I think we're both really high on Nico and what he's going to be capable of in the Josh Heupel offense. But I do worry that like he's a first year starter. This is going to be like his first real taste of a full SEC season. I do worry if we're going to see some warts along the way. We tend to when it's a quarterback this young, particularly in a league that was already hella tough and is now exponentially tougher with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference.
Yeah, for this, it's all like basically just a few games different. You probably have Alabama beating Tennessee in this
Mhm.
situation because again, like the Vols have struggled with Georgia, Alabama, and Florida since Philip Fulmer stopped being good 2 decades ago, pretty much. So, yeah, I get that. And again, it's the same thing with Ole Miss. Like the two losses you can't afford to have. That's very Mark Richt. That's kind of how that's going. My second team out is the Virginia Tech Hokies. I've got them going 10 and 2, not quite good enough to get to the ACC championship. I have SMU getting there and losing. If SMU wins, maybe they get in. maybe Miami would have gotten in as two ACC teams, but again, the second loss for SMU takes all the momentum out of their sails. The ponies become glue basically.
Love it. So I also have Virginia Tech as my 14. I had them playing in the ACC championship game against NC State. I'm really high on what this Virginia Tech team is going to be capable of this year. I think that honestly, like looking, if we're going to tie this into week one, I was looking at the lines. They're only like a 13 and a half point favorite against Vanderbilt, and I'm like, is that a sign of Vanderbilt being better than we thought, or is that just the line not respecting Virginia Tech? But I'm high on this Virginia Tech team. We're high on Kyron Jones. We're high on the experience. We're high on Brent Pry. Like, there's no reason not to like this Hokies team. But I also like, I will throw out there, if there's one team in this top 16 that I'm confident of absolutely just making us look like idiots, it's Virginia Tech. Like, that's the most likely candidate, in my opinion.
I know it's like I'm sitting there like they could make the playoff or they could go 6-6. I don't know if they're going to do this.
Exactly, dude.
Uh, Third team out, I had the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I've got them going 10-2. They're going to have a really strong year there, but there's obviously going to be the Gator hunting rabbits game. But they'll win that game. But like I think I had them losing to Utah and Kansas State. There'll be some dumb game there where like they almost lose, they pull it out, they pull a rabbit out of their head like Jason Witten, and it's going to basically be like, yeah, that almost lost to like what I don't even know. You almost lost like TCU or something terrible. So like
Yeah.
they'll be good. They'll be playing like in the Holiday Bowl or some mess like that.
No, it's going to be a good season for Oklahoma State. I have them at 16. So like I'm very close with you. I'll go with my 15 and complete this, but I have Alabama as the 15. I think Alabama is going to where I've ultimately landed on Alabama is this is going to be a good football team. It's going to be an inconsistent football team. I think that the defense, that like the defensive issues, the defensive turnover that we've seen, I think it's just going to lead to some inconsistency. I don't think the offense is going to be inconsistent. I think that Jalen Milroe under Kalen DeBoer, with the talent that they have, with the talent they have on the offensive line, particularly, I think is going to put up points on most teams. But I just don't think that this defense is going to be the caliber that we're used to seeing from Alabama. And so I think that's going to lead to some inconsistency. I think like in a game, like why I have them beating Tennessee even in Knoxville is because I think that they can keep up with them. I think that even with Tennessee's defense being improved, I think that Kalen DeBoer and this offense can keep up with them. So like I think it's just going to be a really hot and cold year for Alabama. So that's why I have them kind of missing out and ultimately ended up finishing behind Tennessee, a team that I have them projected beating.
Yeah, Alabama is my 16. I've got them 9-3, the highest ranked 9-3 team. Again, for the same reasons you have coaching staff changes. Georgia and Tennessee are going to be really good. I try to remember who else they beat or whatnot, but like I think they beat Mizzou. That'll be a quality win. But again, you're beating like the
Yeah.
20th best team in the country. So we kind of basically outside of like a few picks, like obviously I'm higher on Utah and Miami. You're obviously higher on NC State. I kind of pulling basically the same sort of teams here. So
Yeah.
that's great. Okay. The first round games. You have any upsets? Mine are all chalk. So I've got Notre Dame, number 5 Notre Dame over number 12 Liberty, number 6 Oregon over number 11 Penn State, number 7 Texas over number 10 LSU, and number 8 Tennessee over 9 Kansas State.
So I have one upset. I do have Ohio State beating Boise State, not shocking. I have Texas beating USC. I have LSU upsetting Notre Dame. I think that's an interesting game. I think Brian Kelly gets a revenge game there, and I think I've got LSU beating Notre Dame in that one. And then I have Ole Miss beating Penn State.
I feel that. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the I guess what the quarterfinals? Yeah, that's I guess that's a
Yeah.
phrase in the lexicon. Um, right now, I think I actually have two upsets in the quarterfinals.
Oh.
I do have number 1 Georgia beating number 8 Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl.
Mhm.
I've got number 2 Ohio State beating number 7 Texas in the Rose Bowl. God, that's going to be an awesome game.
That's gonna be sick. I'm here for that.
First upset, I've got number 6 Oregon beating number 3 Utah in the Fiesta Bowl, and then I've got number 5 Notre Dame beating number 4 Miami in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, I think we have the same upsets. The 5/4 and the 6/3. Like I have Georgia beating Ole Miss, I have Oregon beating LSU, but then I have Texas beating Kansas State and I have Ohio State beating NC State. Like again, it's the product of the automatic qualifiers. And I would honestly one thing I would I think I would want to see, or at least like see talked about moving forward with the playoff, these quarterfinal games potentially being at like the home stadium of the AQs, just to give like these Big 12, particularly if it goes as we see, like as we're projecting in this, like to give these like Big 12 and ACC champs a little more like of an advantage for earning that AQ spot.
I know. I mean, I'm looking at mine right here. Those four matchups are all really good. I mean, you've got SEC East rival there with Georgia, Tennessee. Obviously, you got two massive brands with Ohio State and Texas. Former Pac-12 rivals with Oregon and Utah, and then Catholics versus convicts there. In the okay,
That's right.
so semifinals. I've got Georgia beating Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and I've got Oregon beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Third time's the charm for the Ducks. So that's who I've got right now going to the national championship in Atlanta.
Okay, so I have Georgia beating Ohio State, and then I have Oregon beating Texas. So, shocker, the top two teams in the country are going to the national championship game.
And it's Kirby versus Dan Lanning in Atlanta. I saw what happened there last time, and go Dogs. That's my national champion.
Yeah, we're a little boring here. It's I'm not a Georgia fan. I'm not a Georgia grad like you, my friend, but it's the best team in the country. And I don't I the more I think about it, the less close I think it is, honestly.
I think Georgia probably wins by two, three scores, maybe potentially. It'll be close, and then there'll be like a mistake that Dillon Gabriel will make, like Malachi Starks
Hmm.
will kind of. But again, like Oregon is going to win a national title under Dan Lanning. I just feel like, it's baby steps getting there, making the playoff and everything like that.
Hmm.
And pretty much every other year, I think Oregon could definitely do it. And again, everybody on game day picked either pretty much Georgia or Oregon to win the national championship for the most part. I think the Big Ten guys with Dez and Herbie picked them, and McAfee and Saban, and I don't really care what Shamus picked, but probably Georgia. Or he may have picked Notre Dame to win the whole thing. I think now in
Yeah, right.
retrospect.
I think he probably picked Notre Dame.
Just unpack this a little bit before we move on to the next topic. I think the biggest thing for me is 9-3 is not going to do it this year. That I'm
Yeah.
like, and as much as you want to put five or six SEC teams in there, even that's hard to do.
No, it's quite difficult. I think that the more we unpack this, like I do think we will see a 9-3 team in the playoff at some point, but I don't think this is the year for it. Like when you look at the upper crust of the SEC specifically, I think that there's just too much talent with those top teams. Like obviously when we were talking about our top 16, we didn't mention Missouri in these. And
No,
like we think Missouri, we're very high on Missouri. We like this Missouri team. We like Eli Drinkwitz, but like at the end of the day, like there's so much talent at the top of this conference that I think that we initially looked at that as like, okay, there's going to be quality losses that this committee can weigh. We can get it at 9-3. But the flip side of that, which I think we've now kind of reverted to, is the fact that there's also going to be teams that just separate themselves. There's going to be 10 and 2s. There's going to be 11 and 1s. There's going to be 12 and 0s that we see in that mix. So like, I think that separation is something we may not have considered initially, but like again, I do think eventually we will see a 9-3 team. I just think with the way the SEC is constructed, with having like teams like Ole Miss and LSU and Missouri and Alabama and Tennessee all being viable playoff contenders, like some of them are just going to get weeded out of the pack.
it's really interesting. There's like teams that I think are going to go like 9-3 and 8-4. That would be like 10-2 in most years and getting in. Michigan may be good enough to potentially do this. Maybe that's how you're higher on USC than me. I'm higher on Miami, but it's the same sort of thing. Arizona, another school, West Virginia, Iowa State, like these are all like teams that will probably finish the year ranked, but like SMU, like they can't quite get there because of just the top heaviness of it. And that's okay. And that's what we wanted. And more importantly, this is exactly what everybody wanted anyway. They want everybody to have an opportunity at this, even if the Big 12 or the ACC champion or the group of five really have no shot. At
Mhm.
least they're there. Who saw TCU beating Michigan? It happened. These things happen.
Oh yeah, dude. It's it's more bites of the apple for chaos. And I think like that not only applies to the 12 team playoff, but that applies to these conferences that are realigned. Like when you throw in an Oregon matchup, a matchup in Washington, a matchup in Southern California with USC or UC, well, maybe less so UCLA, but like, and our matchups at Oklahoma, matchups in Austin, like you're talking about like a real X factor in how these seasons could play out. Like there's a lot of factors at play that I think we're already heading towards a chaotic season. We've had one ranked team play so far and they lost in Ireland to Georgia Tech. So like I think we should take that as a tone setter for what this season could actually be.
I think that's fair. I think probably where we both got there with Georgia and Oregon is just the high end and the depth. And I think there's just
Hmm.
attrition there. And I figured that like for as much as we like Texas, they could get decimated by injuries down the line. For as much as we like Ohio State's depth, we wonder about coaching. Obviously, the Ole Misses of the world, they're not really recruiting at that same level out of high school. Like that stuff matters. And
Hmm.
we'll see. But obviously, these teams making the playoff, the exposure they'll get, like this will be tremendous for Kyle Whittingham's program or whomever succeeds him by 2027. So like again, every team that makes this is going to benefit from it tremendously.
No, absolutely. And I think I think we'll see Lincoln Riley benefit from it if he does, like if my projections are correct and they make the playoff. Like that's so much pressure lifted off of Lincoln Riley if he's able to do that. It doesn't matter if he loses to Texas in the first round. Like the fact that he finally got USC back to like a playoff team, even if it took an expanded field to do it, like that's going to be important.
For sure. And even though he has been in the presence of Eric Crouch's couch, I don't think he or any of his players are going to be coming to you live from Eric Crouch's couch. Yes, Cody and I are not Heisman voters, if you can believe it or not, but we did come up with a fake ballot here. So we each picked like our top three guys, and then we figured who's going to get to New York. You probably have a pretty good idea here. I'll let you start, brother. Who do you got? One, two, three. Who would you fill it out as?
Yeah, so I might floor you with this because one, I have Dillon Gabriel. Two, I have Quinn Ewers. That's not going to floor anyone. But three, I have Miller Moss.
Oh my God, dude. No way.
I'm going for it, man. Look, I mean, it's a Lincoln Riley quarterback. The reason I am high on USC is twofold. One, I think D'Anton Lane is going to fix this defense eventually. Like, I think this LSU game in week 1 is going to be a shootout. But I think like eventually we're going to see this USC defense improve. But more importantly, I am high on what Miller Moss is going to be able to do with these playmakers in Lincoln Riley's offense with the headset communication. I think that's something that we're underrated. We haven't really talked about it a whole lot on this show, but like the fact that head coaches can now communicate with a quarterback, you look at Miller Moss, his bigger thing is inexperience. I trust Lincoln Riley in not a whole lot of areas, but one thing I do trust him to be able to do is to get a pre-snap read of a defense and maybe not necessarily tell Miller Moss where to go with the football, but definitely tell him where to not go with the football. Like, hey, the left side is dead. Don't even look there. Like you're going right side. Zachariah Branch is going to be open on that side. Like I think it's just setting up for Miller Moss to just put up a season that is undeniable statistically with the weapons he has around him and in this offense with the advantages that they're going to have. I think this really comes down to like where I ended up on USC. If I have them as a playoff team, then Miller Moss is going to have to play like a Heisman candidate. And so, like, I don't think Miller Moss wins the Heisman, but I do think there is a very viable chance that he gets to New York.
I think that's fair, but I will say that when they show up, Lincoln. So follow me on this. So they're going to be in New York. Lincoln Riley's going to order $700 worth of pizza to his hotel room and not tip, and then the pizza delivery man's going to punch him in the face, and he's going to show up there with a shiner or a neck brace. Either way, it's going to be great.
Both. We need both.
um, yeah, maybe Hickey too, but I don't think that's happening. That'd be a really weird encounter.
Oh, God.
Okay, so my Heisman ballot, I've got Dillon Gabriel winning the Heisman. I've got Carson Beck out of Georgia, finishing runner-up, and then I've got Cam Ward there with Miami.
Okay.
Those are all guys that probably doesn't shock us there, that I think could all conceivably get there. Um, who else do you think having is going to make it to New York if you have anybody? Is it just those three you mentioned, or do you have it out to five?
I have it out to five. I have Carson Beck as my four. I do think Carson Beck makes it. When we did the SEC preview, I did talk about why I think Carson Beck may not win the Heisman. I think Georgia's just balance on offense is going to hurt him statistically, even though Georgia and him are like, I think he's the best quarterback in the country, but I think that the best quarterback in the country doesn't always win the Heisman Trophy. Like Andrew Luck did not win the Heisman Trophy, and Andrew Luck was damn good. So like, like we just see it every year. Like stats rule when it comes to Heisman voting. And then five, I went with the token non-quarterback, Ollie Gordon the second. I have Ollie Gordon getting into New York. I think that we're both high on Oklahoma State. We both think that they're going to miss out on the playoff, but be in the mix, be close to that range. And so I think with Oklahoma State doing that, it's going to be on the back of Ollie Gordon. It's sure as hell not going to be on the back of Alan Bowman. So like I think that Ollie Gordon is going to get the shine for that.
Every time I see Alan Bowman's name, I think it's like what's it up? Alan Dudek, the guy who played Stu the Pirate. Is that his name?
Alan Tudyk, yeah, dude,
Dude,
absolutely.
God, he's Egg's mom. He's Egg's dad in Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pastor. We're gonna have a magic trick. uh, I kind of follow the same sort of thing there with you for my four is Riley Leonard. I think Notre Dame going undefeated.
Mhm.
That's kind of the Miller Moss spot that I have him occupying, and then I've got Ollie Gordon fifth as the token non-quarterback.
Yeah, we got to have the token non-quarterback there, man. What do we like? It's got to be there. Maybe it's Evan Stewart. Maybe it's not. Maybe Oregon's dominance it leads to Evan Stewart being that guy. But I think that we're both. I think Ollie Gordon is a solid pick from both of us.
The only thing I don't want to see have happen is when Dillon Gabriel's there. If Mackenzie Milton comes there and just slanders and just bees a big buzzkill, that would just suck for everyone involved.
Mackenzie Milton, you had a wonderful year or two at UCF. I'm sorry about your leg, but let's not have sour grapes for dinner in New York.
No, let's have some champagne because we're all going to be gone eventually, and he gone eventually. This is going to be a lot of fun. I have no idea where we're going here. So with coaching changes, we're looking potentially at Power Four head coaches who could be changing jobs, coordinators moving up, maybe some promotions from within. So we've each got five, a sleeper and a potential promotion from within candidate. So I'm going to go with my favorite pick for he gone eventually. That would be Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein.
Mhm.
Um, he'll go coach at like Virginia or something like that. He's like our peer. He probably wishes he could go to Louisville, but fellow U of L alum Jeff Brom's got that thing humming. So tough S, bro.
No, I have Will Stein at number one as well. I think we're both really high on him. I don't think that Kenny Dillingham, what's happened with him at Arizona State, I don't think that's going to be held against Will Stein. I really don't. I think that that is an Arizona State problem, not a Kenny Dillingham problem.
Right.
I really badly wanted to put Kenny Dillingham on this list just so he can go somewhere else that's not completely dysfunctional. I know that's not going to happen, but I think we're both still really high on Kenny D. So like, but no, Will Stein, what he's done with his offense, what he did with Bo Nix last year, like nothing short of incredible. Like he's just been an unbelievable offensive mind since he took over this offense. It's been a short term, but I think we're going to see it for another year. He has another quarterback that should be ideally suited to what they want to do, and it's going to just raise his stock even further.
Totally agree. Who's your number two?
So number two, I have your boy, Glenn Schumann. And I think it just makes sense. Like we've seen, I think that the success of Dan Lanning at Oregon, incidentally enough, is just going to further elevate the stock of Georgia defensive coordinators. Like I think the fact that you're learning under Kirby Smart, you're learning how to program build under Kirby Smart. I think that's just a feather in their cap because I think everyone is just trying to replicate what Georgia has been doing for the past 4 or 5 years. So I think that getting someone from that Georgia staff, someone obviously who's as experienced as Schumann, I think it's just going to elevate his stock even further if Georgia has the success that we expect them to.
I have Glenn Schumann fourth. I think he's going to get a job at some point. I'm wondering which one it's going to be.
Hmm.
Again, he's from Texas. He went to college, Alabama. It was a GA there, essentially our student assistant under Nick Saban. Followed Kirby to Athens, has been there ever since. He's 34, 35, whatever it is. He's ready for this. But I will say though, the one apprehension I have is I wonder if he has the personality of like, a Dan
Mm.
Lanning or even a Fran Brown or even Mel Tucker or Sam Pittman beforehand, where like it resonates. He's kind of been below the weeds, out in the grass a little bit. I also think the fact that like you've had Will Muschamp there, who's a force and a
Yeah.
fantastic defensive mind too. Uh, yeah, I would agree. Like you got T. Rob coming in there. You've got Dante Williams, I believe, was the former interim at
Hmm.
USC. Trey Scott eventually, I think, will get his opportunity there as defensive line coach. But like Where would he go? Would he go to South Carolina, Kentucky, or TCU? That's kind of where I'm thinking Schumann could potentially go.
No, I actually really like the Kentucky fit if that were to happen because I think that you look at Mark Stoops and you talk about the reserve personality of Schumann. I think it would just be kind of a continuation of what we've seen from Stoops. Like I think he is like I think one of the things Stoops does best just kind of being that like stabilizing force. Like there's never like a whole lot of volatility when it comes to Kentucky, and I think Schumann could absolutely do that.
I think that would be a pretty good fit. I'll talk about Mark Stoops here a little bit, but number two, I've got Jed Fish because he's going back to Florida, baby.
Yeah, I have Jed Fish at number three. So yeah, he gone. Like I don't even think we need to put the eventually. Like I think he's already got the moving truck booked for January. Like I think we're already there.
I'll be putting out my he gone eventually. And with every coach, for the most part, like I put three teams where they could go. Very Bleacher Report of us, but I know it's great. They really have that. They do a good job with that. I think it's really cutting edge that they started doing that, and
Hmm.
obviously it's going to help us here. But Jetfish, I just have Florida. Like everybody else, maybe
Yeah.
one other guy. I just have like one other team, but like it's Jetfish. Jetfish is going to go to Florida. So he's your three. My three is Gus Malzahn. I feel the allure
Mhm.
of him and at UCF, potentially, we know he's destined to go back to the SEC. We think he'd be the top candidate to potentially replace Sam Pittman if he fails at Arkansas. But he could also go to South Carolina. He could also go to Kentucky. Honestly, I'm not going to say. I think Jeff Levy will get some time here because Zach Selman
Mhm.
seems to be in his corner from their OU connection. But like Gus Malzahn's like in his mid 50s. He's got this opportunity and he will succeed. It's the same thing with why Hugh Freeze was eventually going to make his way back to the SEC. So like, yeah, I feel Gus Malzahn is either leaving this year or next year for an SEC gig.
So I've Gus Malzahn at five. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that I don't think he's unhappy at UCF. Like, honestly, that's why I have him at five and not higher, is because I do think there's a world where he would want to stay at UCF. Like, I mean, Gus Malzahn has a little Florida man energy to him. So, if he wants to stay in Orlando, maybe stay in Orlando. But I do think at the end of the day, like, he's an SEC guy at heart. And I think that if one of those opportunities is presented to him with the money I expect, particularly at a South Carolina or an Arkansas, with the money I expect to be behind those, I do think it's going to be hard for him to say no if they do offer him.
Perfect. You've said all five of yours, right? Or am I missing somebody?
I don't have my four. I haven't said my four yet. And my
Okay.
four is Alex Atkins at Florida State.
Okay.
And I think that I'm projecting here. I'm very well aware of that. I think we saw what Alex Atkins did last year, and we're very high on what his potential is. But I think that by the end of this season, Florida State is going to stabilize this offense behind DJU. And I think that's going to be the final feather in Alex Atkins's cap. I think it's going to be a situation where, we've seen him succeed with a Jordan Travis, with Keon Coleman, with all this talent, Trey Benson, all these guys that Florida State had last year. But if you can do that, but also take a offense that is basically piecemealed together with a quarterback who you and I believe is not that good in DJU, and if he can still make Florida State a ACC contender, then that's like that shows a lot about what his moxie is, what he's capable of. Like he doesn't need the highest end of talent to make it work, to get it to succeed. And so like I think that's going to be something that would be really attractive to another program.
I would agree. He has the show cause for this year. I think it's done next year, but like once that's done, he will move.
Yeah.
Uh, I've tied him to UCF if Gus leaves beforehand.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Anywhere else you think he could conceivably go? He's kind of more like a line coach, I think, initially, like the Andy Reid kind of coaching tree there or
Yeah.
methodology.
I could see him in like at Baylor, Texas Tech. Like I think he has a little bit of Texas to me, and I think with that offensive line background, with like going into Texas, a recruiting hotbed, with the linemen we see come out of Texas, those boys coming out big boys who are ready to start as freshmen. Like I think he could have a lot of success there, like setting his footprint with that.
Yeah, I'm looking at his Wikipedia. So he played guard at UT Martin in the mid 2000s. Prior to getting to Florida State, he'd pretty much only been at like G5 schools, so like Marshall, Georgia Southern, Tulane, Charlotte. So I don't know. It's like I'm trying to. He's also born in Chicago, so like he could really go anywhere. Like maybe he could. I have no idea, but like yeah, I could see the Texas Tech and the Baylor of it all. Is there anywhere in the ACC you think he could be a good fit besides Florida State? Maybe not.
Yeah, Florida State. Yeah, it'd be great there. No, it's hard for me to see because I think like Virginia would be an odd fit. North Carolina, I think, would be a little bit of an odd fit. Wake Forest, that's not the hire I would want at Wake Forest
No,
with the recruiting thing, with the recruiting hardships that they're always going to have. I don't know. The ACC, like I know he has a footprint there, but it just feels like there's not a natural fit, particularly with the teams that we think where the jobs could open up.
I've got one. He could go to Pitt. I think Pitt could work.
Oh, Pitt could work. Yeah, kind of just like the offensive side of Narduzzi, basically.
Just liming him to death. Like, I think the change
Yeah.
from like what you're doing with the slow mesh to what he wants to do, that's going to be oil and water there in Winston-Salem. Obviously, if he
Hmm.
goes to Virginia, that's kind of the same thing with Tony Elliott again. They got to go in a different direction. Even though I guess Will Stein's kind of the same thing, but maybe not the Dabo stink of it all. But I like that. I like that. So my number five was Mark Stoops. I think Kirk Ferentz is going to retire and he's
Mm.
going to take over there. I also had there's also Mark Stoops was a really fantastic coordinator there at Florida State. I'm not saying Mike Norvell would leave, but there may be a chance where he's like, I am just sick of it here. We can't leave. And if Mike Norvell, again, Central Arkansas guy, maybe he goes to Arkansas as well. So like, and when we know Mark Norvell had tremendous success there, uh, at Memphis. He's a Todd Graham disciple,
Hmm.
so he's been at Pitt. He's been at Arizona State, Tulsa. Um, I think he's honestly like, Dan Lanning is one of Dan Lanning's other mentors too. So like, I feel
Yeah.
like it could be shocking. You could see some sort of Satterfieldian move here, but like if Norvell's like, I can't get out of this prison, I'm leaving.
I can't get out of this prison that is the ACC.
I like that. Who's your sleeper?
So my sleeper is Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State, and I'm not sure that he's going to get looks this year because he is coming. It's his first year at Penn State, first year kind of like elevating above Kansas, which he already helped elevate Kansas alongside Lance Leipold. But at the end of the day, you look back at what Kotelnicki has done in his career. He had the Buffalo offense humming. Then he went to Kansas and got the Kansas offense humming. And he's followed Lance Leipold. He's finally going out away from Lance Leipold to get more credit, I would suppose. If he fixes the Penn State offense and has Penn State humming in a way that we obviously didn't see under Mike Yurcich, I do think that he's going to start getting looks because kind of like a Kalen DeBoer, the track record just becomes too strong for you to ignore. Like if you've succeeded at three very different stops and three programs that frankly have had like a very different set of challenges to overcome and you've still found success, I think that's a real trump card for him to play in like any interview.
I feel that again, maybe like a year away. I definitely think he's a future head coach. If he has success at Penn State, he's had success at Kansas, he's had success at Buffalo, Wisconsin, Whitewater. Where do you think he could
Mhm.
potentially go if he does get a job this offseason?
So I think somewhere like looking at what we've seen, especially like recently, I think somewhere like North Carolina would make a lot of sense. Some they were looking for like a younger, he's not young, but like a younger than Mac Brown. That's a low bar to clear, but like someone who will bring a little bit of life to North Carolina. And I think having his offensive system, I think having that like creativity in that track record of success, especially if we're turning the page from Matt Brown, I think that would make a lot of sense. I also think he would make a lot of sense at a place like South Carolina because I think that one of the things that Kotelnicki has proven is that he can overcome a talent disadvantage, which is what South Carolina has to do to find success in the SEC. Like South Carolina would probably be a very good ACC team if like top half of the conference, but you're just at a disadvantage playing in the SEC. But I think that Kotelnicki's offense is the type of thing that can close that gap a little bit.
Kobnecki.
Kotelnicki.
Kobnecki. I like those two. I've got the perfect spot for him. That'd be Purdue.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Because it's like whenever Purdue's really good with Jeff Braun and then Joe Tiller back in the day, it's all offensive stuff. I love Ryan Walters. I want to see him succeed. Maybe just again too much of a change. Maybe he can go to Colorado, maybe reinvent himself here. We'll see what happens in year two there in West Lafayette. But like if Colt Necky can win in like Kansas, I think he can win in West Lafayette.
Yeah, dude, if you can win at Kansas, you can win anywhere. That's honestly how I feel. Like I wanted to put Lance Leipold on this list, but he seems very happy at Kansas for whatever reason.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk, maybe that's why.
That's right.
Maybe I think he fishes with Antonio at Potter Lake.
That's right. Fishing for goalposts, baby.
He's actually his professor at Hogwarts, Wingardium Leviosa,
Jesus.
and nothing levitated.
Let me tell you that the coffee almost just went all over my computer screen. Jeez.
That was the closest we ever got to doing this, and I'm sorry I didn't warn you with that. But my my sleeper is a fellow offensive coordinator. That'd be Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech. He's been
Okay.
doing this a while, getting repackaged there, being a GA essentially or assistant on Kirby staff. Now
Hmm.
having tremendous success with Brent Key, and these two guys again, opposite sides of clean old fashioned hate, will absolutely vouch for him. Say nothing but the nicest things for him. And I figured he could basically do really well at some of those, more academic places. I think he could do well at Wake Forest. He could do well
Hmm.
at Vanderbilt, and possibly even your guys as well. Although you got to just got to tell Jeff Collins to leave. But like, I think Buster Faulkner could do a. I really when I saw what he was doing there in Ireland, made me feel really good about his chances to lead a team. Maybe not necessarily the top of the tier with recruitment, but like he will get the most out of his players. I'm very high on what he can do.
No, I like that a lot. I think that he honestly, him and Koto remind me a lot of one another. Like overcoming a lot of inherent adversity with the programs that they've coached at to still find success. And I think that's like when I look at a head coaching candidate, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I want someone who just success travels for them. And it's not like dependent on like having all of the resources, having all of the advantages that frankly, like someone like Lincoln Riley has seen throughout his career. Like, he walked into a great situation at Oklahoma, and then he walked into USC bringing Caleb Williams with him. So, like, Lincoln Riley's coached a lot of this and like had success as a head coach because of a lot of advantages he's had in his favor. Whereas you look at a Buster Faulkner, you look at a Koto you look at honestly, like to a degree, when Kenny Dillingham came to Oregon, like they were still building that program and he still found that much offensive success. So I think like the ability to overcome some adversity to get to where you are is something that I speak highly of as a head coaching candidate.
Yeah, I think having the not just like the accreditation or like the approval, like people like Kenny Dillingham did good stuff at Auburn under very challenging circumstances. Again, a
Yeah,
big reason why Bo Nix did transfer from Auburn to Oregon. The last guy I want to talk about, my potential promotion from a thin candidate. I don't know how you were going with this. Morgan Scalley is going to replace Kyle Whittingham there at Utah. He's
I like that.
he's younger than Andy Ludwig, who had been at Vanderbilt, offensive mind. But again, Utah's got a very tremendous culture. Kyle Whittingham got promoted from within when Urban Meyer left to go take over at Florida. Morgan Scalley is, I think, in his mid 30s, early 40s, played for the Utes. I think that would fit whenever the time comes. That's the guy I've got my eye on for that box.
I like that. I think that's probably the most obvious candidate. I went a little off of the board and I have two that I couldn't really decide between because I don't know. This was the hardest part of this exercise for me, if I'm being frank about it. But one I went was Tim Lester at Iowa. If we see this offense improve marginally and Iowa does want to move on from Kirk Ferentz, then I think getting the guy who replaced Brian Ferentz, like kind of a show of we're not doing this nepotism S anymore. Like I think that would go a long way with Iowa. And then also like you throw in the factor yes, we think that Mark Stoops would be a high candidate for Iowa if Kurt Ferentz were to step away, but Mark Stoops also has a pretty cushy gig at Kentucky.
Yeah,
He has a really good job. He's compensated very well for what he does and the success he's had there. And so like would he want to leave? Like is that actually something that's on the cards? We don't actually know that. And so like if that were to happen, I think Tim Lester would be a really good candidate to replace Kirk Ferentz. The other guy I have, Brennan Carroll at Washington. If Jed
yeah.
Fish doesn't bring him with him to Florida, which is very possible because he brought him with him to Washington from Arizona, but like if not, I think trying to maintain some semblance of stability, like so you're not turning over two coaches in 2 years, I think Washington could be motivated potentially to get him the bag, to give him the like, hey, we'll compensate you well enough to stay here and try to maintain some stability with this program.
I really like those two. I thought you were going to go Iowa potentially with LeVar Woods, but again, it seems like yes, he played for Hayden Fry, and yes, he's under Kirk Ferentz, but maybe they want something a little bit different there. It's
Hmm.
starting to kind of become the John Sherholtz incestuous cesspool of the Braves way, where it's like just get Alex
Yeah.
Anthopoulos in here and just reinvent this thing. Yes, Brian Snicker's been down there before, but likable, agreeable, good teacher of the game. So I think Tim Lester, obviously having the background there, with Western Michigan, I think that's all going to go well there
Mhm.
too. And I love the Brendan Carroll pick. Obviously, the fact his dad's Pete Carroll, and obviously
Yes.
you're in the same city that your dad became essentially a Pro Football Hall of Famer at. Maybe your dad comes on there and is in some part of the staff. Obviously, the late Monty Kiffin would do that with Ole Miss with Lane there
Hmm.
in the 70s and possibly early 80s. I really like that. Brendan Carroll is certainly trending up. What I also really like is I'm pretty skeptical, even though Mike McDonald is a Georgia alum and everything like that. I don't know if that's going to take. And maybe Ryan Grubb's like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Washington. And then you
Ooh.
really cooking there, man, on Carroll staff. I love both of those. That's exciting because like maybe we're ahead of the curve there. Again, we're putting these names out there that nobody's thinking about, but like that's pretty cool. I love that.
I mean, to be clear, I'm also putting myself out on a limb where I could look really stupid because to be clear, I'm talking about Tim Lester. I'm not sure that the Iowa offense is going to be that good. I'm wearing my Live Laugh Punt shirt today in honor of the Hawkeyes. So, I have my skepticism whether or not that would be a good hire, but I wanted to think a little outside the box with it.
I mean, I was banging the table for Jeremy Pruitt to be a head coach, and Jeff Lebby is now. I was years ahead of that. Eventually, I was right. Pruitt blew up my face, but we'll see what Lebby does there at Starkville. But yeah, that's fun. Live, laugh, punt, and this is false. All right.
That's right, baby. That's how we live our lives.
Speaking of somebody who likes to live and laugh, punt, we are going to do the Antonio Banderas Bowl of the Week. He's not really a laugher, but he likes to live and he likes to punt, punt on obligations, if you will.
Live Bulldog Punt.
So we got back from Ireland. We were able to de-escalate the situation with tests involving Rob Riggle. We got back on the plane. You threw him. He didn't deserve. You're like, you don't deserve his seat. You go in the trunk.
Always. He ends up in the trunk so often.
So we decided that we need to get his spirits back up, and we're gonna go to the Gators hunting rabbits game. We got
Hmm.
not Jacksonville State. Who cares? Well, they're chickens, but he probably hunts them too. It's early in the morning, well, 10:45, but whatever. It's been a long night. But yeah, so we've got the South Dakota Jackrabbits going to Stillwater, gonna ride a pack of dogs, and Gator's gonna break his rusty cage there with the Oklahoma State Cowboys in Stillwater. That's gonna be amazing.
It's gonna be beautiful. I'm gonna be honest. One of the reasons I was, pounding the table for this game, I think an upset's live here, brother. You got a South Dakota State team that has not lost in 29 straight games. Back-to-back FCS national champions. They have the Walter Payton Award, which is the FCS Heisman Trophy winner, and Mark, I think it's Gronowski is how you pronounce his last name, returning for another season. He's a dual threat against an Oklahoma State defense that the defense is my concern about this Oklahoma State team. I'm not worried about the offense. I know that Mike Gundy's going to be able to do that. But then you factor in the Mike Gundy factor of this, which is he has a very bad tendency to not give an S about non-conference games. We saw them lose 33-7 to South Alabama last year before
Mhm.
going on to play for the Big 12 championship. So that's what we're talking about. And like the fact that this line is Oklahoma State minus 9.5 tells me that the odds makers know that South Dakota State is live to be in this game as well. So like I think that Antonio's favorite shade is Mike Gundy red, and I think we're going to see some red face Mike Gundy in this game.
Seeing more rather than Chevelle, man. That's what we're talking about. Probably do that. We'll probably do that at some point too for just like
Oh
Novocaine
yeah.
because why not? But it's the Gators hunting rabbits game, and I think the last time we were in Stillwater, Gundy threw Antonio off the pontoon boat because he wouldn't put his shirt on.
Correct.
But I was sitting there thinking about this. The on the Antonio Mount Rushmore, it's Eli Drinkwitz, Mike Gundy, Jerry Jones, and Jerry Kills. So that's it's four favorite people besides us.
Besides us, and he has it's not on the mountain, but he has a little statue of ghost hunter Kirby Smart down there as well. He loves the ghost hunting.
He sure he sure does. But yeah, I'm excited for this game too. I think it would be absolutely wild if the Jackrabbits upset the Pokes, and I think uh that's certainly within play. We'll kind of know a little bit more what happens there with the shenanigans. Again, it's the water is very still, and it's not a fever dog. It's a jackrabbit, and we're hunting rabbits, man.
I don't know, man. Well, everything I've heard about still water, not the town, but actual still water, is that that's where the fever is burning, man. There's a lot of bacteria going on in
Sure.
there.
I've never really asked you what's Antonio's opinion about Gator, the tortoise? Does he like Gator, or does he kind of feel like threatened? I think he likes Gundy more than Gator, to be honest with you.
He likes Gundy more than Gator. I believe he doesn't actually know what a turtle is, if I'm being quite honest with you. He looked at it and he told me bulldog, and I was like, no, no, not bulldog. That's Gator. That's a turtle. And then that just confused me even more because his name's Gator. So yeah, he's a little standoffish around Gator. And also, we know our friend Antonio. He's a friend of most wildlife. He loves a rabbit, you know. And so like the fact that Gator's out there hunting rabbits this week, he's not a big fan.
Dude, so many animals. So they're hunting rabbits. It's bulldog. It's a tortoise. So we're like, no, La Tortuga. Like we know this. And then he's like, but gator, which I don't know how to say gator in Spanish. So it's gator. El gator. El gator.
I took French, so I have no clue. I didn't learn any French, but I took that, not Spanish. So.
I mean, you are the Cajun beast. You know a little bit about French, a lot about animals.
Ho, 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 ho.
You like Mario. I don't know if you could spell etouffee. If I spotted you all the letters, I couldn't do it either. That word's so hard.
Dude, it's tough, man. But shouts to the little French I do know. Shouts to Coach Herman Boone and Remember the Titans, one of our favorite films. What is pain? French bread, baby.
And speaking of Herman Boone, we're gonna do some just like Novocaine. We're gonna do it a little bit differently. So on every Thursday show, we're gonna do this. Instead of like we're gonna let the coaches create their own canon going forward. So we've
Mhm.
done enough to build the backgrounds and the stories of them. We're talking about the games, baby. So we're gonna do some Fallout Boy, and we're gonna each pick a game that describes this song. So we're going to start with my favorite song by Fall Out Boy, Grand Theft Autumn, Where Is Your Boy? Who do you have for their first big minor hit?
Yeah, shocking no one. I went with a sicko pick on this one. Troy versus Nevada, because I think Nevada is live to pull off this upset. I on the Stacking the Box College Football Edition this week, that was my upset pick was Nevada winning this game because Troy's looking around like, where's your boy? Where's John Summerall? Where's the dude who built up the Trojans program? Well, he's in Tulane now, and I have no idea what this Troy team is going to look like. But I know that my boy Jeff Choate is in Nevada and that he's going to cause some chaos early in the season. We saw it almost last week with SMU. I think that's not a mistake. I think we're going to see Nevada surprise some people.
I think that's good. I went with Virginia Tech at Vanderbilt because, you're the last good thing about this part of town, outside the Parthenon where Antonio and Diego Pavia P, it's that would be Midtown part of Nashville. I don't know if that's true, but it's funny.
We're Antonio Diego Pavia P. Absolutely, brother.
I was sitting there, I'm like, why did I put that down a couple of days ago? Again, it's like Kenny Dillingham with So I was like Teen Spirit. I'll probably remember it here at the end of the show, but that's kind of where I went with that. So Sugar, we're going down. What game is that?
Sorry to our fan base in Tallahassee, but I have Boston College, Florida State because I think Florida State can go down again. Going
Oh.
down swinging. We look at what happened in Ireland with Georgia Tech. One of the biggest things that stood out to me is the Florida State defense just looked discombobulated. Whatever Georgia Tech wanted to do running the ball, they did. Whether it was Haynes King, whether it was Haynes, their starting running back, they pushed Florida State around. Now you're going to face arguably the best dual threat quarterback in the ACC in Thomas Castellanos. That doesn't I don't think this Florida State defense is going to be fixed a week when they're also traveling back from Ireland. Like I'm worried about this game for Florida State. And so they might be going down swinging this week, man.
Could you imagine if DJ goes, Coach Norvell, I left my beats back in Ireland. He's like, I don't care. You played like ass.
I should have left you in Ireland, is what he's going to say after Monday night.
uh, with or without you, we're a better football team.
That's right.
I love that. That's really bold there. But I got Sugar going down. I got the biggest game of the weekend with Clemson versus Georgia, and I'm going to cover my
Mm,
ass here. One of these two top 15 teams is going to go down in the polls. I think it's going to be Clemson. It could be Georgia. Again, I'm already really nervous about that. But like again, like there's going to be a lot of discussion on social media and the internet with whoever loses this game. So they're going down.
I like it. I have that game for another song, which I'll let you guess which one that is until we get there.
Okay. Who's gonna dance and dance? Who's dance and falling apart to halftime?
Yeah, so I have Miami versus Florida in Gainesville this week. Falling apart at halftime. Does that not sound like a Mario Cristobal trait to you, particularly in Gainesville on the road with high expectations? Yeah, Billy Napier's going to be dancing on Saturday because yeah, it's not going to end. I think Florida absolutely pulls this off, and I think that Mario Cristobal starts the season on the sourest note possible.
I've got Miami and Florida a little bit later. I've got the penultimate game of the weekend, LSU versus USC in Las Vegas.
Mm.
We know that Brian Kelly likes to dance, and we don't know if Lincoln Riley can't dance like Genesis. And falling apart at halftime, whoever is losing, again, somebody is going to be social media is just going to be an absolute frenzy there.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Okay, this song is known as 16 Candles, but the technical name for it is a little less 16 Candles, a little more Touch Me. Who do you not blame for being them, but you can't blame yourself for hating it?
Yeah, so that's where I have Clemson in Georgia. Because this is all about Dabo Swinney for me. Because not only do we have I don't blame you for being you, but you can't blame me for hating it. But then we go to the next verse and it's write me off, give up on me, because darling, what did you expect? What I expect is him to not use the transfer portal and not fix this roster. This roster is still like has some holes. I don't trust Cade Klubnik, and I can't like what do I expect? I expect them to get boat raced by Georgia. That's what I expect in this game. So like I like people are going to knock them down in the polls, like you said, if they do lose to Georgia. But like, what do we expect? Like, we have a 2 year sample size now of what to expect from this iteration of what Clemson is in the transfer portal era, and I think Georgia is absolutely going to beat the brakes off of them.
Well, I'm sure the viewers, listeners will understand. I get nervous about every Georgia game. Even
Yeah.
Vanderbilt. I'm sitting there thinking, like, gosh, we're gonna be like 10-0 leading at halftime. Everyone's freaking out. This is just what I do. And because the team's good. And they're already picked to win the national championship, but I don't know. I feel a lot better now. This was the game that I had for Miami at Florida. This is the one I feel the strongest about. So
Okay.
I don't blame you for being you, but you can't blame me for hating it. That's Mario Cristobal, big a blockheaded idiot, and then Billy Napier being Billy Napier, probably trying to make some chicken S out of chicken salad and still getting more chicken S. Uh, Sleeping on your folks, Portugal dreaming. She said, why don't you just drop dead? That's again what we're going to probably hear at halftime from the Canes and Gators fans for whoever's losing.
Amen to that, brother. That's awesome.
Moving on to a song that is spelled with no vowels but pronounced with some. Thanks for the memories. Maybe we're on the same page here.
Yeah, I have. Well, I don't know who we are, but I'm going North Carolina and Minnesota.
Oh no.
Thanks for the memories, Mac. We've had some success, but we're done here. It's not been the sweetest. It's not been the best. And also, we can flip this to the other side of the matchup. Minnesota, like I think we're thanking PJ Fleck for the memories after this year as well. So, like, yeah, I think this is a matchup of two coaches who will not be here at week one next year.
I love that. This is perfect. I'd like to thank our beloved fanside.com colleague Scott Rogas for inspiring this one. That's Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Yeah, thanks for the memories, even if they weren't so great.
Oh my God.
It applies to both schools.
It absolutely does.
And speaking of falling into a bonfire, let's light him up with my songs Know What You Did in the Dark to bring us home with this segment.
Yeah, Akron versus Ohio State. My God, this is going to be a bloodbath, dude. Akron might be the worst team in the country. Like, no joke. Like, they are absolutely atrocious. Sorry to Joe Moorhead. Not sorry to our boy Vince Nairn, who hates Akron more than anything in the entire world. But now you have Ohio State coming in, and I have a feeling that Chip Kelly is going to want to flex on somebody. I have a feeling that Chip Kelly and Ryan Day are not going to not want to run it up. Like this line is, I believe, at 50. Like I think they're favored by 50 points. I would take Ohio State in that scenario because I think they hang a 70 burger on Akron in this game. Because the other thing that I think is going to happen is Will Howard is going to start this game. Obviously, he's their starting quarterback, but then we're going to get into the backups where when we haven't really talked about this, Ohio State has an incredibly deep quarterback room. You're talking about Julian Sain, you're talking about Aaron Nolan, you're talking about Devin Brown. Now, I think Devin Brown is terrible, but that's not neither here nor there. I think those other two are very high-touted recruits, and I think once they come in there, Ohio State's not going to put them in there to take the foot off the gas because you look at a Will Howard. One of the things that I think we have not considered totally is Will Howard's been banged up quite a bit in his career, and Chip Kelly is going to run him, so he's going to take more hits. So what these quarterbacks look like, I do think they're going to want to see what they look like in a game like against an Akron. And I think that we're not going to take our foot off the gas. I think this is going to be an absolute bloodbath. I'm thinking like legitimately 70-3 as a final score.
Nobody would be happier about that than our beloved Minute Media colleague, Vince Aaron. I don't know if this is true. This is going to add to the can. I'm sure we'll get him on the program at some point. But so I was sitting there. They used to play at the Rubber Bowl, and now it's some sort of like healthcare stadium. Did you know that Toledo plays at the Glass Bowl? Did not know that.
I did know that. Yeah, the Glass Bowl. Yeah, it's much like Jason Candle's head coaching candidacy at the P4 level, it's made of glass. So
Vince had the worst night of his life, at an Akron Zips game when he was a kid. He tried to get an autograph from Zippy the kangaroo, and he goes around back at some dude wearing suspenders smoking a Pall Mall.
hey, and kangaroos are a volatile beast. You can't trust a kangaroo ever.
No, and I don't know if I can trust my pick here, but I have a sneaking suspicion that West Virginia might upset Penn State.
Hmm.
And a lot of points that typically happens there in WVU football games and light them up. That's them couches burning, baby.
The couches, let's go.
Dude, I love that. Like this was so much fun doing this exercise. Heads up, we're
Mhm.
doing Better Than Ezra next week. So ultimate
Oh yeah, we
college
are.
football man. Yeah.
I'm desperately
It,
wanting to do better than Ezra.
uh, it will be good doing it. And maybe it'll be extraordinary. I don't really know at that point yet.
That's
We're gonna
right.
fit. We still got to figure out our six. We'll probably do that after we wrap the show up here real quick. But we're gonna finish the segment up here. Again, this is like the last episode before the season starts in earnest. Again, this is like our 1 year anniversary. We turned one. I saw we get the push notification on Twitter says like, "Oh, you celebrated your 1 year since being uh, a Twitter account." So immediately crossed that out, and I saw that Elon got rid of balloons. So maybe I won't see that here in about 2 weeks. So that's unfortunate for me.
Tough for us. Tough for us. That's yeah. What are we doing?
And we're going to bring back one of our favorite seasonal segments. The less I know, the better. Obviously, absolute banger from Tame Impala.
Hmm.
Um, Baseline, just such a crunchy groove. And three parts here. We're going to say, what did we get the most right about this offseason? What did we learn the most? And what are we going to keep getting wrong? So, Cody, what were you the most right about in the offseason in the lead up to what we're going to see here at Labor Day weekend?
So I'm gonna cheat a little bit with this one, but I think that the fact that we saw the ACC as the weakest Power Four conference, I think what we saw in week 0 has already proven that right. I feel very vindicated in that. Florida State going to Ireland and losing to Georgia Tech. Like, I don't think that overall we think that the ACC is a bad conference. I just think we think there's not necessarily a top tier in that conference. And I think that what we saw from Florida State was absolute confirmation of that. And I think we're just going to see further confirmation of that when Clemson gets blown out by Georgia. So like I already feel very vindicated in that take.
I like that. The thing that I was probably the most right about here is just the clear separation between the Power Two and the rest of the Power Four. As much as we want to say that the Big 12 is right there knocking on the door, it's a chasm between them and the Big Ten right now. Maybe they can
Hmm.
make up ground right now, but right now I think everybody's kind of viewing it the same way. If Notre Dame was in the ACC, maybe that would add some clout to that league. But again, we're kind of the same sort of thing there. What's the biggest thing you learned in the lead up to the season?
The biggest thing I learned, I think we've already kind of touched on it, is that these SEC schedules and these Big Ten schedules are going to be like it's going to be a case by case basis. Like I think we looked at this coming into the 12 team playoff and what that would look like with realignment. And I think we looked at it as like, well, it's just going to be Big Ten and SEC teams with the group of five, ACC and Big 12, just getting like, a thrown a bone. And granted, that is what I have here in my projected playoff. But at the same time, I do think like we were talking about earlier, a 9-3 team in the SEC is not necessarily going to get in. Whereas I think we thought that was a distinct possibility. So like I think it is very much a case by case, year by year basis that we're going to have to go through the schedule and figure out where the wins, where the losses are to actually determine these fields, as opposed to, well, these are the five best teams in the SEC or the four best teams in the Big Ten, or however you want to slice it up. I don't think that exercise is going to be as successful of a way of doing this as we initially thought, or at least I initially thought.
I'm right there with you. Basically the same sort of thing. Like we may go into the offseason, like back in July and June, we're like, oh, this is definitely good. Oh, this is a 10-2 team. And then we look at the schedules, and then that basically outlines everything. And you're like, oh, I always said Ole Miss was a lock to make the playoff. I don't have them making it right now. You're sitting there like, I don't know if I really trust Tennessee. I think they'll be good. I've got them going 11-1. Oh, Cam Rising is going to make it to the Heisman Trophy. I'm like, no. It's like once you kind of go through and do all of this, it puts everything in perspective, and you can actually be an accurate analyst here. It's amazing what putting in the work, what you can do when you do that.
No, absolutely, dude. It's yeah, when we put in the time, we get a better product. Odd how that works out.
And finally, what's the one thing you're going to keep getting wrong?
Yeah, Michigan could go 12-0, and I would still not think they were a good football team. Let's be clear about this. Like, I just do not think that they are anything remotely close to what we saw last year. I fully have faith in this defensive line. I have full faith in the secondary. I have full faith in the defense as a whole. But I do worry about losing Jesse Minter. I do worry about that. I think it is a downgrade in terms of what we're going to see on the defensive side of the ball in terms of coaching, even if the talent is still there. And then you go to the offensive side of the ball. I'm terrified of what that's going to look like. I am absolutely terrified of what Alex Orji throwing a pass is going to look like on the field. And like, I think their defense is going to win them a lot of games, but I think that when they face a truly elite opponent, when they face an Ohio State, when they face Texas in week 2, like, I think we are going to see just how much this separation is between what Michigan was and what they currently are.
Dude, I was so shocked that Dave Portnoy threw Connor Stallions under the bus like that.
Hilarious, dude. Hilarious. The cut by the Netflix like producers was so savage. It was like, "Oh, I don't know who that is. Like that's not me." And then it cuts to Portnoy and he's just like, "Oh yeah, he told me that was him. He was there." And I'm just like, "Damn."
Like he was like Connor Stallions was like lying under oath, like while this is happening. I don't know if you saw our media colleague, Pat Forty, what he wrote about that. He said, like, yeah, this guy was an obsessive fanboy.
Oh, dude, 100%. Did you watch the doc by chance? Yeah.
I have not. I'll probably be able to watch that on Sunday.
So highly recommend. It's very, very good. Enlightening. And I think like to the fanboy point, at one point they've cut and Connor Stallions had mapped out where every draft prospect over like I think like the last 10 years was from. So trying to find like the biggest talent hotbeds to like go through there, which is just an absurd exercise to be going through. But he like he took fanboy to an entirely different level.
I mean, he served under a psychopath, and honestly, I have some psychopathic tendencies. You've seen what I'm capable on fanside.com over the last decade. It's like, if anybody on .com could do that, it would be John effing Buhler.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you just show up with the Charlie Day map and being like, Carol, Carol.
Pepe, Pepe Sylvia. God,
That's where
that
all the
that
prospects are from, Pepe Sylvia, baby.
oh, I'll be watching that with the Arizona State podcast, and she'll be like, God, that ball was out of control.
Absolutely.
But again, it's my thing that I'm going to keep getting wrong. It's the same sort of thing. If I don't like you or I really like you, that's going to impact how I view the season starts. Like, I don't like Lincoln Riley. I think everybody actively hates Michigan entering this season, so I'm down on them. But there may be people out there that like I may be really high on. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think SMU is going to have a great year because I like Brett Lashley and his shrimp cocktail eating ways. But like, I could be wrong here. This is the same thing. Like, oh, I kind of like Rutgers, and they could go 4-8 as opposed to 8-4. Like, I'm going to keep getting this wrong until I'm dead, and I plan on doing this until I'm dead. And oh my god.
I'll give myself an honorable mention on thing I'm going to be wrong about. NC State, I'm dying on that hill, brother. The Wolfpack, shouts to the NC State podcast in this house, but yeah, I'm going to die on that hill that I think NC State is going to win the ACC. I could be staring down like a 0.1% chance, and I'm going to be like, but you're telling me there's a chance. And I'm just going to I'm going to go down with the ship.
I mean, if it's good for your marriage, it's good for you. It's good for the podcast. It's good for me as my boss. So I mean, like, yeah, I think like the wolf pack. Let's do this. Let's do
Let's
this.
go, baby. Oh, that felt dirty. I can't do that again.
No, no, it's yeah. I was just trying to get you to you're like, God, I want to do this stuff.
Ah, stop that.
I have to cut my hand off. Like going on the blog and dirty podcast with Ian McMillan yesterday. I'm like, Ian, I would literally cut my pinky finger off my dominant hand if I could get a pass rush. Like, I don't need this. Like that just hits L on a keyboard. Like, we don't do L's here. Stupid.
We've got voice to text now. We're fine.
Yeah, a lot of cool people missing digits. I mean, Jerry Garcia, Ron Swanson, Deion Sanders.
My middle school gym teacher.
Kid on my baseball team growing up, his dad had like half a thumb and it was strong as hell. He'd beat you at like thumb wrestles all the time.
So my middle school gym teacher was missing this ring finger right here. And which, funny for reasons I'm not going to go into in some ways, but the other thing was the story is just terrifying. When he was a kid, him and his brother were chopping wood and he was putting the wood and his brother would chop and he would put the wood and his brother would chop. Well, they got their timing mixed up a little bit, so he was putting the wood over there and his brother chopped and just chopped it right off.
That's the same thing that happened to Jerry Garcia. It's the same sort of thing too.
Yep.
Honestly, this is also an Arizona State podcast. So yeah.
Yep, it is.
On that note, this was episode 104 of False Start. This is most. I'm so glad we were on video today.
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, episode 104 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Once again, we will be coming to you semi-live after the Texas A&M Notre Dame for 3 yards in a cloud of punt. We're really excited for what week one has in store, man. I am chomping at the bit right now. I'm a Gator, man. I'm ready to F and go, brother.
Man, I'll tell you, I would say like a month and a half ago, I looked at the week one slate and I was like, am I really excited for this? And perhaps it was just the distance from it, but I was like, there's not a ton of marquee matchups. Like we've got Georgia-Clemson, we've got Texas A&M Notre Dame, but like, how much do we really have, particularly on Saturday, that really wants to get me excited about? And the closer we get, the more I'm just like, oh hell yeah, give me, we're going to Stillwater. It's going to be electric. I'm ready for Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt. Like I'm fully locked in and ready to go now.
Like Gator, we're gonna break our rusty cage and run. And this is false.